we have him in the frame since we're talking about him. I mean, right? You're the star of the show. Anyways, cargo transport. Whoopsie daisy. There you go. Technical difficulties. Hi everyone, my name's Janie. I'm a mother of one and our family's moving to Norway. We did run into a bit of technical difficulties last time and it took me a while to get it all sorted, but I am back and we are going to be talking about how we're going to transport this guy to Norway. So sit down, it's going to be an easy one again, slightly information heavy but not that much. It will be mainly focused on transporting cats as pets. I did a little bit of research on dogs as well, but if you have any other pet, then I'm sorry, this video might not be for you. But regardless, let's get to it. So let's kick off with complications. Let's get the hard bit out of the way. There are a few, but nothing that would prevent us at least from going ahead. There is a very generic or general complication that I have found, which is regarding transportation of certain animals. For example, fighting dog breeds and snub-nosed animals have restrictions placed on them. So with fighting dog breeds, you have to have specially made kennels for them, and they can only go in hold. Also, certain airlines may impose further restrictions on this, depending on the country where you're going. For example, if you go into Germany, check Germany regulations, because they may not allow some dog breeds to enter the country at all. The other one, like I said, is a snub-nosed animal. Now, a snub-nosed dog or a snub-nosed cat is essentially the kind of animal you see on the streets that have a flat face. Is the best way I can describe it. And that anatomically, they have restricted airways, and so it's harder for them to breathe. That then means they cannot go in hold. They can only go in the cabin, so they have to be a small animal. And that's another restriction. Depending on how you want to transport your pet, for example, we want to take him into cabin with us, the pet has to be small. It has to fit in a specific sized carrier, and I'll cover that actually in the next section on transportation in cabin. But they have to be small to fit within a certain sized carrier to go on board with you. I think they also, with the carrier, cannot weigh more than 8 kilos, so like your standard hand luggage. But those are the generic restrictions on animals, the fighting dog breeds and the snub-noses. As I am editing this video, I forgot to mention that there is another restriction that you need to keep in mind, and that's the age of the animal. Pretty much any airline will restrict it. It's generally 12 weeks, however, Germany has imposed a 15-week. So your pet has to be at least 12 weeks, or 15 weeks if you go to Germany. Then specifically when going to Norway from the UK, unfortunately, since UK is not part of the EU anymore, there aren't that many airlines anymore either that are allowed to transport animals. It used to be Norwegian, it used to be SAS, but those have now stopped doing that service. And it's only British Airways, Lufthansa and KLM that are allowed to carry animals. British Airways can only do it in hold, they do not do it in cabin. Lufthansa and KLM do both in hold and in cabin. So it kind of limits the options, limits the routes you can take as well. Financially, it's gonna pretty much decide what sort of price you're gonna pay for your ticket and for the journey. But it's manageable because all British Airways, Lufthansa and KLM are very good companies. I've always had only good experiences with them. Now finally, when going to Norway with a pet, you can only arrive in Oslo airport. You cannot go to any other airport. Only Oslo airport is equipped and designated as the importation port for pets and animals. So again, that severely limits the route that you can take going into Norway. So let's focus on relocation in cabin. As mentioned earlier, it is mainly for pets that are small. This is because they need to fit in a soft-walled carrier, small to medium-sized soft-walled carrier of specific dimensions. Now, Lufthansa and KLM sizes vary slightly, but on average they are 40 to 25 to 25. This is because they say the carrier needs to fit under the seat. It doesn't happen, to be honest. We have a couple that moved from America to Europe, and also they flew with Lufthansa, I believe. And they also brought their cat in cabin within the dimension specific carrier, and it still did not fit under the seat unless they were like to squish the carrier. So what ended up happening is they ended up keeping the carrier between their legs, and that apparently passed. But that's what you need to think about when you want to transport your animal in cabin. There are certain documentations and requirements with the flight as well, but I will cover all those later on in the video as well. Right now, what you probably want to think about is how you actually get the cat or pet on board. And the process is pretty straightforward. You book your flight ticket first, and then you contact your airliner, Lufthansa or KLM, to let them know that you are planning to bring a pet with you. With both, I believe, they will then go through a confirmation process, which essentially means they will pass it to a relevant team who will confirm that the pet can go on board. Now, the reason why they do that is that there is a limited number of pets that can go on a flight at any given time. I do not know the number specifically, the airlines didn't share, but they don't want to have a flight full of pets, essentially. Also, it is to limit exposure to any people who may be allergic to animals. So the less animals you have in flight, such an enclosed space, the better. It also depends on the flight itself. For example, KLM City Hoppers, I think up until March 31st this year, will not transport pets. So that's also something that they need to take into account. But once the animal is confirmed and you've paid their fee, then you're good to go. You can rock up on the day of your flight with the animal and check them in as a passenger. And then on the flight you go, and yay, off you go. But be mindful that there will be a cost attached to booking your pet on flight. It's like flying with toddlers. With toddlers, you have to pay 10% of a full price ticket. Kind of similar with pets as well. You have to pay a certain amount. One more thing you want to think about when transporting your pet in cabin about your carrier is that at the check-in desk, what they might do is have a look at the pet inside the carrier. Because even though it's specific dimensions and they're kind of smallish, the pet needs to be able to comfortably stand up in there and turn around. They cannot be squished in there. When I did ask the airlines, like, do you have an objective way to measure this? Like, how do you decide that kind of thing? There isn't an objective or uniform way of measuring this. Essentially, what it boils down to is the person you're doing a check-in with on the day. How strict they're going to be and how merciful, I suppose is the word, they're going to be. But as long as your cat or dog, if you're transporting dog in a cabin, a small breed, is comfortable in there, as long as they don't look squished, like they're literally bulging out the size of the soft-walled carrier, in theory, you would be fine. But be mindful of that as well. Especially if you have a larger cat or a larger small dog breed kind of thing. So transportation in cabin is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. There isn't much that you need to do. Unlike with transportation in hold. Now, for transportation in hold is for animals that are medium to large size, or essentially above 8 kilo. So any of your medium-sized dog breeds and larger horses, all that kind of thing. And there's also, flying from UK to Europe, there is a 5-day rule, which essentially means that the pet has to fly within 5 days of you. So let's say you fly on the 1st, the pet has to fly no longer or no later than 6th. This is simply because when they enter the country, your destination country, within those 5 days, they are a non-commercial import. They arrive later than that, and they become a commercial import, even if they are your pet. And that just drastically then changes the whole importation process. So be mindful of that. You can also do transportation in hold yourself, as well as via a company. Again, like with moving your stuff that I mentioned, going privately or doing it yourself may be cheaper on paper than going with a company. Simply because you can shop around when you do things yourself, and you might prefer it that way. So if that's something that you do want to do, there are certain things that you need to think about when you transport your pet yourself. So when pets go into hold, they are in specifically custom-built kennels. Now, you cannot transport them in your usual kennel. And these kennels need to be made to the size of the pet within the standards of the company that you'll be flying with. You also need to take into account additional costs. So when you fly in cabin with the pet, all you need to pay is their flight ticket going in. With flying in cargo or in the hold, there are additional surcharges that you need to consider. And again, every company will tell you their surcharges, because British Airways, Lufthansa and KLM likely have a difference. You also need to make sure that you comply with all importation procedures of your destination country, as well as exportation procedures with your country that you're leaving from. So do familiarize yourself with that. There may be documentation that you need to get. There may be forms that you need to fill in. Vaccinations. There may be authorities that you need to let know in advance. So do check that out if you do want to do it yourself. However, the process of flying with animal in cargo is kind of straightforward. You get to the airport with your animal in the kennel. You go into the check-in desk and check everybody in, check your pet in, then they'll take it from you, likely into what they call a pet lounge, with a dedicated pet transport team from that airport. They will then load the pet on the plane, you board the plane, you arrive at your destination, you get your checked in baggage, and then you need to collect your pet. Usually that comes in the bulky luggage section, from what I could find. So that's where you pick up your pet. Now, after you pick them up, you may need to go through customs again, just to show all your documentation. And if there were authorities that you needed to let know in advance, you will also meet them at the airport, so they can check your documentation, make sure that you're good to enter the country with your pet. So the transportation itself is straightforward. It's the thing that happens before that you need to make sure you get absolutely right, because if you make a mistake at some point, especially with the importation or exportation procedures, then that's just going to complicate your whole travel, and God forbid, may even prevent your pet from traveling with you. Another thing you need to consider when you're transporting your pet in hold and you're arranging it yourself is that there is at least with KLM, there is a restriction on the layover. So if you're flying with KLM and you're transporting your pet in hold, the layover cannot be longer than 3 hours. Now, this is simply because the team assigned to pet care at Amsterdam Airport works 3-hour shifts, is the best way I can put it. So that's enough time to unload the pet, take it to the pet lounge, is what they call it. If it's a dog, take it out for a walk, stretch the legs and whatnot, give them food, give them drink, plonk them back in, load them on the plane. They cannot work at longer timescales than that, because they have other planes coming in with other pets, and it's the schedule they work on. So that's what you need to think about. Book yourself a flight that doesn't have a longer layover than 3 hours. Now, on the other side, what you have, if you don't want to do it privately and take that bulk of work and responsibility on yourself, you can go with a pet relocation company. Admittedly, it is the more expensive option. However, for an ease of mind or peace of mind, it may be the way to go for you. So British Airways specifically partnered with Pet Air UK, simply because it's a company that is run by vets. So you know there will be quality of work and attention given to your pet. And the beauty of flying with a pet relocation company is that they take care of everything for you. And certain companies can come and pick up the cat or pet. They will board the pet until the flight. Then they will take it to the airport, check it in, board it on the plane. And then on the other side, you pick the pet up. Or some pet relocation companies may also arrange for an agent on the other side to pick up the pet and deliver it to your home. Admittedly, the core essentially of any pet relocation company is get the pet, get their certification and documents straight, checking them in, board them, off they go. That's the core. The pick up your pet, board your pet, deliver the pet to the airport, arrange for an agent on the other side, deliver to final destination, all of that on either side are usually extra services that come at extra cost. So do be mindful of that. The whole process of pickup to delivery is not standard. The standard is just the core I just mentioned. But that's essentially what you're looking at if you decide to go with a company. And I'll be actually mentioning the costs a bit later on. Right, let's talk about the requirements now. These will be mainly for Norway. I have not researched any other country, so if you go into Norway, this is for you. If you're not going to Norway but you're relocating to a different country, feel free to skip this part or do listen to it anyway. It's entirely up to you, but we are focusing on Norway right now. The requirements for documentation and vaccination is pretty much the same whether your pet travels in cargo or in cabin. In terms of documentation, what you will need, because of UK, that's no longer part of the EU, you cannot use a pet passport as you could before Brexit. What you can do, what you have to do now is you have to get a health certificate, which is a one-off document that's quite costly. But that's what you need. You need a health certificate for your animal. What that essentially means is that you have to set up an appointment with your veterinarian no longer than 10 days before travel. So if you do it 15 days before travel, it's not gonna work. 10 days or earlier. And what they'll do, they'll check your animal, check that they're healthy, that they're good to go, and then they will prepare the health certificate, which will be in 2 languages, English and the language of your destination. Now be mindful that if you're flying with a transfer, then do check with the airline as well as the airport whether you're going to be going through customs during your transit. Because if you are, then your health certificate will likely need to be in the language of the transit country. For example, if you were to fly from UK to France, you go through customs and then you need to fly elsewhere, your certificate will need to be in English and French, even if your final destination does not speak French. Simply that's how the rules are set up. At least that's what my vet told me. So that's a health certificate. If you're flying direct, perfect, you're sorted. But that's what you need. You need a health certificate. The other document you may want to have at ready is your vaccination document. So for cats at least is this little booklet where they note all the regular vaccinations that they get, where they will also note the rabies vaccination. So let's talk about the vaccinations actually. There is only one vaccination that cats need, and that's the rabies. Now, rabies cannot happen earlier than 21 days before your flight. So essentially, the rabies vaccination will not become valid until 21 days have passed. Also, your cat needs to be identified before getting rabies. What that means is they need to be chipped. So your cat first needs to be chipped, and then they can get their rabies vaccination. If your cat isn't chipped, you need to arrange for that first. Now, I cannot speak for the cost of that. This guy got chipped when he was a kitten, and so we were able to do our rabies vaccination straight away. No issues. For dogs, they also need rabies, but they will also need a specific tapeworm treatment. And that treatment can either be done over I think 28 days, several doses, or it can be more intense over a few days. Now again, check with your veterinarian. because they will be able to tell you specifically. We don't have a dog, so I don't entirely know, but you will need a tapeworm. Let me quickly check actually what it's called. The red dwarf tapeworm. Check that out. Check that out with your vet. And also they will note it somewhere, either on the health certificate, or if dogs also have this vaccination booklet, maybe it will get noted there. But that's what cats and dogs going into Norway will need. Cats, just rabies; dogs, rabies and tapeworm treatment. Another thing that both animals will need is being chipped. Now that chip has to be read by 2 standard issue chip readers that they use at the airports. Again, check that with your vet, because they will be either able to get the right chip, or they can check that you have a chip that's needed. Now this guy, like I said, was chipped when he was a kitten, and so the vet used one of the standard issue chip readers. It went fine. If, however, your pet was chipped and it is not read by the standard issue chip reader, then you need to provide your own chip reader. And they're not very expensive to get, as far as I know. Excuse me. And so you will need to bring your own chip reader to the airport so that you can scan your cat there, or they will scan the cat for you. Now, finally, the last requirement for going to Norway is that you need to let the Food Safety Authority know that you're arriving with a pet. And that has to happen at least 48 hours before your arrival, ideally even earlier. Simply because somebody from the Food Safety Administration or Authority needs to be there at the airport to meet you, to check your dogs, check your cat, check everything you had to get right, you got it right, so that you can enter the country with your pet. If they discover any mistakes, or you didn't arrive with everything you were supposed to arrive with, then they will take the pet, board it with a vet, you have to pay for the boarding, and you will have to get whatever it is you're missing at your own costs. Now, they may be able, the Food Safety Administration may be able to help you arrange for it, for whatever it is you're missing, but you always have to pay. So be mindful of that. There will be a separation from the pet where you cannot see them, you cannot visit them until you get your ducks in a row, you check out, and then they give you the pet. So be mindful of that. Now that we've pretty much covered the complications, transport in cabin, transport in whole, requirements, let's talk money, because everything's tied to money when it comes to relocation. So I have a list here actually in front of me that I will be referring to, because numbers in my brain don't generally work together, but also it's a lot of information. So if I don't look at you, that's where I'm looking at, but I'll also be putting the numbers here on the screen so that you see them. So there are different costs associated with going in cabin and then going in hold privately or with a company. So let's start with the cabin. With a cabin, it's pretty straightforward. You need to get the gear for the pet. That's the softball carrier. We are also getting puppy pee pads, because you cannot take the cat outside of the carrier at all during the transport or when in the airports. So puppy pee pads will make sure that if your pet pees or poos, it's somewhere where you can just scoop it up, chuck it out, replace it. So puppy pee pads. You also probably want to bring bowls for food and drink. So we are going to be getting collapsible ones. I'll actually be going through the whole gear set that we got for Gizmo in another video, so you see specifically what we got, and then I'll do another review video later on about how it actually worked. But anyways, these are the 3 things that you need to think about, and they will, depends on how expensive you want to get, they can be anywhere between 50 and 70 quid. You also need to think about the vaccinations and the health certificates. So the rabies vaccination in my local vets costed £130. The health certificate will be about £230. Then you also need to think about the ticket for your pet to get on the flight, which can be anywhere between 75 and £150, depending on the airline. So let me check that I got it all. essentially did. So what the costs you're looking at is roughly in total about 550 when you're transporting your pet in cabin with you. £550. Now let's have a look at the in cargo transportation privately. And this is where I will need to be referring to my list, so bear with me. So when you transport your animal in cargo, you need to think about the custom-made kennel, and again, balls to go with it. It can be anywhere between £100 and 350. Now that depends on the size of your breed. Obviously, a medium-sized dog will cost less than a large-sized dog. Like if you're transporting a poodle, it's going to cost less than if you're transporting a mastiff, obviously. Then you also need to think about the tapeworm treatment if you're transporting a dog. Now, again, this is based on the research I've done. Roughly, tapeworm treatment may cost you about £60, so not that bad. And then you also need to get the rabies and the health certificate sorted out. Again, the rabies and health certificate costs are from my local vets here, so they may be different with your local vet. But roughly, you would be looking at about £1,000 to transport your pet privately in hold. Now, as we said with company, transporting your pet in hold, they take care of everything. So you're essentially paying for every single bit, plus a little bit extra on top because there's other people doing their job. And so you're looking at costs between £1,000 and £1,500. So if we sort of summarize it, going in cabin with you, 550 roughly, going in hold but organized by yourself, about 1,000, and going with a company, you're looking at about 1,000 to 1,500. So these are the costs you need to consider when you want to bring your pet with you to your final destination. Now the final question is, how are we doing it? So you've probably already figured this out from my relocation of our stuff video, that if I engage with someone who is very open with me, who is very transparent and gives me all the information I need, plus the bit on top, I'm sold. You can take my money, I trust you. Might not be the best way to go, but that's how I work. And that's what KLM did. Every time I engaged them, every time I spoke to their customer service, they have been so incredibly helpful. And they have given me tips. They have even told me how to best arrange for Gizmo to move so that we don't lose out on money. So let me actually take you through it. When we book our tickets, we will book them in the morning. And straight away I will call the airline to tell them we're going with a pet. Please initiate the confirmation process. The reason why we do it this way is because we are probably not gonna buy a flexi ticket because they're just expensive. We're gonna buy the regular ticket. And with that, you can only get a refund within the first 24 hours. Hence why we will book in the morning. I will call straight away. And if by the evening Gizmo is not confirmed, then we will cancel our ticket and we will try again. Because then we can get a refund. Because if, let's say, we book the ticket in the morning and we don't get the confirmation until day 3, but they actually say, sorry, your cat cannot come on the flight, we're gonna lose out on money, a lot of it. And so this is like a fail-safe for us. But that's where we start. We book our ticket in the morning, initiate the confirmation process for Gizmo soon after, and hopefully get him confirmed by the evening. Apparently, the confirmation can take anywhere between a few hours up to 72 hours. So that's a risk we have to take. But after Gizmo's confirmed, we're good to go. We will rock up to the airport on the day with the cat in his carrier, check-in desk, check everything in, show them the cat is super comfy in the carrier, and off we go. We will fly to KLM, with KLM to Amsterdam. And there we will have a layover of about 3 to 4 hours. Because anything less than that, I fear we might end up rushing around the airport and just not making a good time and maybe missing a flight. Anything longer than that would just be exhausting for everybody involved. The cat, myself, our toddler, and my partner, we would just not really have a good time. So 3 to 4 hours in Amsterdam to take it easy, and then flying finally to Oslo. Where in Oslo, we will meet the food administration person, so they can check all our documentation, and then off we go. I will probably let the Norwegian FDA know as soon as we have booked our ticket, because I feel the sooner we let them know, the more likely it is they'll be ready to receive us. But that's how we're doing it, and I'm gonna do another video later on after the move, just to let you know how it actually went. I actually might even do videos during the day, sort of documented, because it's not gonna be every day that I'm gonna fly with a cat or that we will do a massive move like this. So that will definitely make it into a video as well. And you stay tuned if you want to see it or not. That's up to you. But that is it, ladies and gents, dear tribe. That's how we are transporting our cat Gizmo, who has fallen asleep. I hope I haven't put you to sleep. If I have, good night. If not, and you have stuck all the way to the end, thank you so much. I hope you found the information today useful. If you did, hit the thumbs up. If you didn't and you absolutely hated what you heard today, hey, hit the thumbs down. I'm absolutely fine with that. Also, if you want to see more of the content I will be releasing, which will be anything and everything about this move to Norway that we move in, hit the subscribe button as well and the notification bell. The following videos will be on anything from trying to deal with actually leaving our whole life behind in UK and going into a new place where we have literally no one. So it's going to be a bit more of a sit down and a bit more feeling kind of talk, because I don't find that there's a lot of people who talk about that aspect of actually unplugging your life from wherever you are and trying to place it elsewhere. I will also be doing more of these informational videos on the relocation aspects as well. Regardless, like I say, anything and everything you're interested in that, awesome. Hit the subscribe button. Otherwise, I'll see you in my next one.